All right, Mark Rogers TV, your place for college football, as we just took in the Fiesta Bowl with the Big Ten moving to 6-0 as Penn State held off Washington 35-28. The Nittany Lions appeared to be the much better team for most of the game, but due to mistakes and Washington being very opportunistic, the Huskies stayed in the game and almost had an opportunity. Actually did have a brief glimpse of hope in the waning seconds to pull off at least the tie to take it to overtime. But Penn State wins at 35-28 to finish its season at 11-2. And one of the big reasons why is that Penn State had the two, I'm not going to say the best players on the field, most likely the two best players on the field, but certainly the two most dynamic players on the field in Saquon Barkley. And most importantly in this game, Trace McSorley. You saw possibly right after the game, the interview on the field with Saquon Barkley, showing what a class act that he is. He didn't blow off the questions, but he addressed the questions about the NFL draft and explained his priorities at this time and place, and that at another time and place, his priority will be to make that decision about the NFL draft. But for right now, he's not going to be distracted by questions and other talk. He's going to celebrate with his teammates, and with all the hard work and the time and the dedication that these student athletes put into this, they deserve not to be hounded about that. I respect the question being asked. It has to be asked considering the player and the position that he's in as one of the best players in college football and the decision that he has to go to the NFL draft. You have to ask the question, but he very eloquently did Saquon Barkley address the question and just basically not shun it, not minimize it in any way in terms of the importance. But for right now, it's a Fiesta Bowl victory for Penn State, and he wanted to embrace this experience with his teammates. And he had a bit of a limited role based on what he's experienced all season, but still his impact on this game was significant, to say the least. The offensive line for Penn State was dominant early in the game. The offensive line for Washington was overwhelmed by Penn State, that being one of the big reasons why the Nittany Lions jumped out to a 14-0 lead and to a 28-7 lead. Deshaun Hamilton, a class act unto himself. If you did not see the game broadcast or hear the story about his relationship with his brother, having to take care of him in many respects since he's been in the first grade, you need to look that up. There were some details there that I was unaware of, although I've heard the story in the past. Deshaun Hamilton with a bomb for the touchdown to make it 7-0 Penn State. We're talking about the all-time receiving leader at a school like Penn State, one of the very blue bloods on the jersey and in status, the blue bloods of college football. Deshaun Hamilton, what a career, and he finished it off well with 5 catches for 110 yards and the 2 long touchdown receptions from Deshaun Hamilton. Washington had an interception in the back of the end zone. Great play by Byron Murphy as he stayed in bounds with 1 foot that kept this game at 7-0. Barkley was magnificent again in drive number 2 for Penn State to make it 14-0. The double pass kind of woke up Washington offensively because they were completely stuffed and stonewalled at the line of scrimmage, and Jake Browning had little time to throw early in this game, talking first quarter, as Washington besides the double pass play that got them into scoring range, had negative yardage in the first quarter against Penn State in this game. The double pass from Miles Bryant to Will Dissly, it's fun, it's bowl play, and Washington got back into the game to make it 14-7. McSorley had the underthrown ball to DeAndre Tompkins, kind of a back shoulder unintentionally, the underthrow bomb to the 2-yard line, and Penn State was out 21-7. And then Barkley showed one of the type runs that he had last year at this time in the Rose Bowl against USC when he hit up the Trojans for 200 yards and had that one ridiculous run for about 75 to 80 yards at the beginning of the second half at the Rose Bowl. He did the same type run in this one, although last year's was more of a Barry Sanders kind of run. Juke and jive, made a lot of guys miss. reversed field a number of times, went against the grain. This time it was basically the one cut and go, and he beat the safety to the sideline, and he was gone 92 yards for the touchdown. And Penn State was dominating this game at 28-7. But the big play in the game for Washington to get them back into the game. Okay, 28-7, Penn State. They completely stuffed Washington on the next series, buried them to a 4th and 19 back in its own end, received the punt, and Penn State back in good field position at its own 40 with about 5 minutes left in the second quarter. And then Trace McSorley had the unusual pitch to Miles Sanders where Austin Joyner had completely blown up the play, and Washington recovered the fumble, and they were in business. Myles Gaskin on the 3rd and 2, down near the goal line, took the direct snap, and he was untouched for the touchdown. Well-blocked play. He took the one cut, made Brandon Smith miss in the hole, and it was 28-14 halftime. All right, we get to the second half, and Washington comes out, and they had a really well-conceived drive to start the third quarter. Quick passes, offensive line doing its job, but didn't put a lot of pressure on the offensive front in dealing with Penn State's front seven. They got the ball out of Jake Browning's hands through a number of quick screens. They had a number of plays downfield that worked, well-conceived plays, and Jake Browning threw the touchdown to Aaron Fuller past Jason Kabinda. They got the matchup on the linebacker that was a no-brainer, and Jason Kabinda did a nice job in coverage just to stay with the wide receiver. But it was an easy toss for Browning. Beautiful pass over the top to make it 28-21. So after all that Penn State domination in the first almost quarter and a half, Washington was back at 28-21 and feeling the momentum. This is when Trace McSorley shows us why he is, and it was stated a number of times in the broadcast, and I am right on with Greg McElroy in particular. He's the best quarterback in the Big Ten. He's one of the 5 to 10 best quarterbacks in the country. He's better than JT Barrett. There's really no comparison there. Trace McSorley, just a better thrower of the football, a more explosive, more explosive runner than JT Barrett, and JT Barrett deserves all the accolades that come his way. He's produced from day one for Ohio State, but Trace McSorley, a better thrower of the football, downfield, threatens the defense, and really makes some tremendous plays with his legs as well. Penn State goes 7 plays, 80 yards. McSorley, at this point, had hit on 7 of 7 third down throws, and he had some tight windows. There was one to the right sideline to Jawan Johnson on a 3rd and 8 that he completed. Well-thrown football. Then he had the one over the top again to Deshaun Hamilton. This time he threw it over the back shoulder, but it was not a back shoulder throw, but he threw it all the way over the top, threw it high, and threw it deep as Deshaun Hamilton gained separation from the defender, and it was 35-21. A big play that gets lost here is Washington had the long drive for the touchdown the previous possession. They get the ball back. They were moving it. Sharif Miller on a 3rd and 4 flushed Jake Browning out of the pocket, and Browning had all tons of space to either make a throw downfield or to run for the first down. Sharif Miller dove, caught him by the ankles, threw him down, and Washington had to punt. Penn State comes back, and at this point, McSorley was 10 of 11 converting third downs, and he threw one to Jawan Johnson again to complete another third down conversion. And this all with, let's consider, Joe Moorhead moving on to Mississippi State, and Ricky Ronnie, for the second time in 3 postseasons, so not counting the Rose Bowl last year, but going back to the Gator Bowl or Tax Slayer Bowl 2 years ago against Georgia, Ricky Ronnie pressed into duty as the play caller, did an outstanding job for the second time in 3 years. Fourth quarter, 35-21 game. Barkley gets stuffed on the 3rd and 2. Penn State goes for it on the 4th and 6. McSorley rushes to the line. Looks like he's going to go for it, running the ball for the first down, swings it out to Saquon Barkley, and he showed why. Again, he's an athletic freak. He leaps over 2 defenders, goes out of bounds, but not until he advanced the ball for the first down. That was key. It at least allowed Penn State to keep the ball. They could have put this game away because it was 35-21. They drove down to the 18, but then I forget who it was, for Washington, made an exceptional play, really showed the vertical, deflected the ball up in the air. Then Austin Joyner made the interception, and Washington was back in it, down by 2 scores. And then, of course, Gaskin blows the top off the defense on the 69-yard run. He can't be caught. Myles Gaskin with another outstanding day, 14 carries for 98 yards. He scored 9 touchdowns in the last 3 games of the regular season, 2 touchdowns in this game, and Myles Gaskin with 3 consecutive 1,300-yard seasons for Washington. Okay, so that makes it 35-28. Penn State could have shut it down right there and said, we're going to play conservatively. We're going to go by the book. And I don't believe that that would have been the right call. There was too much time in the game. Excuse me, folks. There was about 5 minutes left in the game and all sorts of time for Washington to come back and drive the ball back down the field. So on 3rd and 8, this is what you need to do when you have the playmakers. Not go crazy, not throw the ball in harm's way necessarily, but they dropped back McSorley. Now, how many times does McSorley break, contain, and run for the first down? So you've got that option that you don't have when you just run the football and give up and punt and let your defense protect a lead. They put the game in the hands of McSorley on a 3rd and 8, and he stepped up in the pocket. He avoided the rush, stepped up in the pocket, looked like he was going to take off with it, threw it across his body, made that beautiful pass to Deshaun Hamilton, who concludes his career at Penn State with another outstanding play to preserve the victory with about 2 and change on the clock. And, of course, Washington still had a chance because of the missed field goal by Tyler Davis. I don't know how I feel about that game management decision from James Franklin, considering the kid was 9 for 16. It was a long field goal. There was only about 35 to 40 seconds on the clock. I wrote down 34 seconds on the clock, and you give up the ball at the 28. Okay, the pros are that you ice the game. The game's over if you make the kick. You're up by 10. Game over. You miss the kick, and the kid's 9 for 16, so he's hitting about 55% on those kicks generally. And this one with a lot more pressure on it than probably most of those 9 kicks that he made this year. And you miss, and you give up the ball at the 28. There's only 35 seconds. I would have probably run the ball, tried it for the first down, because they had a short field at about 4th and 5, I believe was the play call. But anyway, it gave Washington that glimmer of hope. Dante Pettis down the field with the catch, the lateral, then he throws it back, and I believe it was Brandon Smith who picked off the pass. Interesting play call, and you expected no less of one Chris Peterson, who 11 years ago pulled it off for Boise State, of course, with the Statue of Liberty play against Oklahoma, not once, but twice on the 2-point conversion and the hook and ladder midfield when they broke it for the big gainer to get themselves into scoring territory. But we fast forward 11 years to the Penn State win. So the Nittany Lions, consider what they accomplished this year. They had a meltdown against Ohio State. The Buckeyes had a tremendous comeback in that game. They lost by 1 in Columbus. They lose inexplicably against Michigan State. They are decidedly not a much better team than Michigan State, but decidedly better than Michigan State. They somehow lose. Strange conditions surrounding that game, weather-wise, the delay. They lose in the last second to Michigan State. Otherwise, this was the best team in the country that nobody talked about the last month of the season, because after they lost to Ohio State and Michigan State, they played 3 scrubs at the end of the year. Plus, despite their high ranking at number 8 or 9 in the college football playoff standings, they were out of it. They were boxed in. They couldn't win anything. So we kind of forgot how good Penn State was until they showed up at the Fiesta Bowl against Washington. They finish 11-2. There are 3 non-conference games with Trace McSorley coming back. And, of course, they lose Deshaun Hamilton, most likely Saquon Barkley, Marcus Allen on defense. And we will, of course, talk a lot of Penn State football during the offseason and get you set for 2018. So I'm not going to run through the personnel right now. But it's App State, at Pitt, and Kent State. Certainly not a daunting out-of-conference schedule. And as was discussed during the broadcast, Ohio State and Michigan State come to Happy Valley. And of course, the Nittany Lions will have to go to Ann Arbor to take on Michigan in the bloody, difficult Big Ten Eastern Division, with Michigan State now in play. You've got 4 of the top 15 programs that appears in the nation. For Washington, I love seeing that the Huskies are playing somebody in 2018. Washington in Atlanta, week 1 against Auburn. Auburn, Washington. Can't wait for that one. North Dakota and BYU also on the Huskies schedule for 2018. Penn State wins it. They're one of the 5 to 7 best teams in the country, if not better, but did not have a chance to kind of reprove that or gain that that place in college football down the stretch. This is Mark Rogers at MarkRogersTV. If you've stumbled upon my YouTube channel for the first time, please subscribe as we talk college football, not just analysis from myself, but as I counted the guest media contributors this year, 98 media contributors from some of the best blogs and broadcasters in college football joined us in 2017, and we will have more in store like that in 2018. Let's go watch the Orange Bowl, and I'll see you next time.